recipes that I'm excited to bake with you. One I've never tried before, and another one is a classic that I love, and plus we're gonna be experimenting with some really great cookies. A recipe that I usually always use, but I wanna try to mix it up a little bit. So that's what we're gonna be doing today. I'm gonna go ahead and first start off by explaining what's in these two bowls and these bread recipes that we're doing. So this first one that you actually see up here, this is a sourdough bread. So I've tried many different types of sourdough. Well, a different way of cooking my sourdough bread. I've tried a few different recipes. This, obviously I started last night. So for any of you that are wanting to start doing sourdough bread, just keep in mind that your bread usually has to sit for 8 to 24 hours or even up to 48. You can let it ferment as long as you want. So this I started last night. Very simply, I added all my ingredients together. You'll mix it and stretch it a couple of times here and there every couple of hours, and then you let it sit. And this is what it looks like today. It's risen a ton, and we're gonna do a few more things with it, and then it does have to sit for a bit longer before we actually end up baking it. And then in this bowl over here, you probably can't see anything in it, but we had to make a starter for a classic French baguette. So what you do in here is you actually will take about a tablespoon or two of sourdough starter. You'll mix it in with some water and a little bit of flour, and this is kind of like a small mini starter that will end up being the start of our French baguette. So this is what we're going to start with today. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to start working on this sourdough bread, and I will try to link these recipes that I'm using. They are both recipes from King Arthur. I've never used this sourdough one. This is actually a no meat sourdough one. So this is what I really wanted to try. So since this has sat overnight, what it wants me to do, it wants me to turn this out onto a well-floured work surface. Woo, okay. And in here I have my flour, and we're just gonna kind of go ahead and dust our surface here. And what we're just basically gonna do as of right now is we're gonna turn this out, and then we're gonna shape it into a ball, and we're gonna leave it for 15 minutes. Classic French baguettes. So I have my starter over here in this bowl, but actually what I want to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and get my yeast actually activated. So you're going to be adding more dry active yeast to this, and I always like to kind of start mine to make sure it is active and that it will properly work in my recipe. So I'm going to show you how to do that before we get into mixing everything else. Okay, so to make sure that my yeast is going to be alive and active and actually working in this recipe, what you want to do is you're going to start it in some warm water, and you're going to use the amount of water of what the recipe needs. So this recipe calls for 1 cup and 2 tablespoons of lukewarm water. Typically you always want to make sure your water is no hotter than 110 degrees. If it's any hotter than that, it will kill off your yeast. So usually the best way to do it is if you have a thermometer, temp your water, or if you put your finger in it, it's about what you would call a very nice warm bath, probably as hot as you could stand it. So you just want to make sure that it's not going to be too hot. And what I personally do to this is I'm going to add a teaspoon of sugar, because our yeast will thrive off the sugar in there. And then for our dry active yeast is we need 1.5 teaspoons. So there's 1 teaspoon. I just kind of eyeball it to half. And I'm just gonna give this a stir, and while this is sitting over here and it's getting to work, I'm gonna start adding the rest of my ingredients into my KitchenAid mixer, because that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put it in our KitchenAid and we're gonna let it mix on a low speed for about 4 minutes once we have all of our ingredients in there. Okay, so into this bowl, I'm gonna go ahead and add in 3.5 cups of unbleached all-purpose flour. You can also use bread flour for this, which is what I'm actually gonna be using, because it's all that I currently have is bread flour. So this is just a 1/2 cup measuring, so I'm just gonna measure again 3.5 cups of butter. So into this flour, I went ahead and added 2 teaspoons of salt. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add in my starter, which if you guys can see that at all, it actually will expand quite a bit. You only need about 1 cup of flour, 1/2 cup of water, and like I said, a tablespoon of your starter. And when you first do it, it will be very small, but it does expand overnight. And this is what you really want it to look like. It's much bigger and it's much looser. It'll be kind of a stiffer dough, ball of dough when you first do it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and scrape this out and put it into here. Okay, so now that I have all that in there, my water and yeast is nice and active. Let me see if I can show you this. So if you guys can kind of see into the cup, you can kind of see like a foam starting on top. That is letting me know it's ready. Only the yeast is live and active and it's ready to go in. So we're gonna just go ahead and pour this all into here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna go ahead and put this on my KitchenAid mixer back over here, and I'm gonna put it on the 2nd setting, and I'm gonna let it mix away for 4 minutes until it says the finished dough should stick a bit at the bottom. So it's been in the mixer 4 minutes on medium speed, and this is what it looks like. It does look slightly rough, but it's still smooth. And what we're gonna do next is put it in a greased bowl. Okay, so what we got going on with our breads right now is with the sourdough one, after it rested for 15 minutes, I went ahead and I put it in my Dutch oven that is lightly greased and it has some semolina on the bottom. And you're gonna now let that set for 2 hours. The other one is still sitting for 45. We're now gonna move on to making cookies. This is a pretty tried and true cookie recipe for me. And it's just like your standard chocolate chip cookie recipe, but I want to make it different. I first want to do browned butter. In addition to the chocolate chips in as well, I want to do caramel and pretzel sticks. So my recipe calls for a stick of butter. So I'm going to put it in this pan and I'm going to get it over on the stove to start browning. And my mom is going to start by helping me chop up some of the caramels. I do have a cutting board. Brown the butter, and I have in here with the butter is 3/4 cup of brown sugar and 1/4 cup of just regular white sugar, and we've got that all mixed together. Now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to add 2 eggs and we're going to beat those in over there on my KitchenAid. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in some vanilla and I'm going to give it another mix, and then we're going to add in our flour and our baking soda. I'm going to add in 2 1/4 cup of flour and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. You can sift this together, mix it together in a separate bowl. I don't really care to do that. And this smells incredible, by the way. It definitely smells like toffee. Browning that butter adds such a depth of flavor. So 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Let me find a measuring. I have 1/2 cup, and I'm going to add in 2 1/4 cups of flour. quick mix before we add in the rest of our goodies. That was wrong. Okay, so now that I got all my flour mixed in, what I'm gonna do next is I'm going to add in actually a half a cup of chocolate chips. Usually I would add in a full cup, but since I'm doing a package of caramel, which I got like a small pack of the Werther's Soft Chew caramels, and I had my mom chop them up. And then I'm probably just gonna throw in a handful of pretzels, and these are ones that I got from Walmart. They're just very thin, small pretzels, and that's what we're gonna put in there. Oven 350 degrees for about 10 to 12 minutes. Okay, so here is the French baguette bread. It has obviously risen quite a bit. It's really nice and puffy. Now what we're gonna do for this is we're gonna go ahead, gently deflate it, and we're gonna start folding the edges in, turn it over, and it's gonna sit for another 45 minutes. So the cookies are now done. They had to cook a little bit longer than 12 minutes. These took more about 14. So we're gonna go ahead and give them a try.
That one's mine. But I got you thicker. Mommy, I think I'm fine.
Okay, everybody, it's actually about 6:40 in the morning. And I am just now gonna put my breads in the oven. I didn't do yesterday because it was too hot and I didn't want to heat up my house. So this is gonna go, I preheated my oven to 500 degrees, but we're actually gonna reduce it to 475. I dusted this and I've kind of cut out a design in it. I'm putting the lid back on and it's gonna go into the oven for 45 minutes. Okay, so like I just said in the first part, I had to wait to bake these loaves because we're having like really hot weather right now. And by the time they were actually ready to go in the oven, it would have been like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And these needed to be baked at like 400 to 500 degrees. So I just didn't want to heat up my house. So I just took the sourdough out. My French bread is over there and it's actually sitting on the trays and it needs to sit there for about 45 minutes before I can put them in to kind of puff back up a little bit. So let me go ahead and show you the sourdough. So here's how the sourdough turned out. It's not as puffy as I would have liked, and it's actually quite burnt on the bottom. So this is something that I'm not too happy with because, so this isn't what I would have liked it to turn out to be. Obviously I did have to wait longer on it, which I don't think should have affected it too much because you can let sourdough ferment for quite some time. But yeah, I'm not quite sure. I put it in my Dutch oven. I followed the directions. I don't know if my oven heats up a lot hotter. It probably does since it's more of a convection oven, but yeah, this is what it all turned out to be. So I'm not too happy with it. It has a nice exterior crust, but not what I wanted. So here's the sourdough. I have to split it up into 2 bands because last time I tried to fit them all into 3 and it turned out fine, but just not what I would have liked it. Like they, got too close together. So these ones are looking really good. They got to kind of rest and kind of puff up. This one's looking kind of oddly shaped because since I did put them in the fridge overnight and took them out, it kind of, the dough didn't really want to stretch out when I had to make the long loaves. It kind of just wanted to bounce back a lot. So I had to take a little bit more time to kind of really stretch this one out. That's why this one looked a little bit funkier, but these ones turned out fine. So yeah. So these are how the French baguettes turned out. They turned out wonderfully. These really are
some of the best French bread I've ever tasted. Obviously, baking bread at home always tastes so much better, but these turned out so good. So I hope that you guys really enjoyed my baking video. It was really fun for me to film. I always enjoy doing baking videos for you guys because I really do love baking. I definitely recommend the French bread recipe. It is by far my most favorite recipe. I just think it turns out so good and it's very easy. You get 3 loaves, you know, you can freeze 2, save them for later. So that is one I would definitely recommend because I've made it quite a few times. The sourdough thing, I'm still trying to figure out myself. I'm definitely new to it and I'm trying to definitely figure out what's gonna work best and just figuring all that out. So that's a different story. The cookie recipe is definitely good though. So I'm gonna link all the recipes down below. If you guys wanna try them for yourself, please comment which one was your favorite recipe or if you've tried one of them. Or if you have a recipe that you think I should try, please make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. I always appreciate it and I appreciate hearing from you guys. And we will see you next time. Bye.